Центру Нова Європа радий сьогодні.
New Europe Center is glad to welcome you here today. New Europe Center is not alone on this platform. We are together with our long-term partner, Carnegie Europe, and we have the key analysts here. So we are glad to hold this event together, and we hold our hand on the pulse of Ukrainian life, and at the same time we carried out an analysis, a research concerning political, security, economic situation in Kharkiv region. For us, it is really important that we have the common initiatives, common goals. New Europe Center and Carnegie Europe, we do a lot of trips around Ukraine. This is done due to support of the initiative Engage USAID, and it is supported by PACT. We thank PACT and Engage experts, and we plan in the nearest future to have visits, research visits and communication visits to Odessa and Kherson region. This will happen in several weeks this month. And we thank a lot UCMC for partnership with our center for holding this event. And I would like to remind to our guests that we have online stream of our discussion. And first of all, I would like to give the floor to our foreign guests, Carnegie Europe, and to our partner, Tom de Waal, to present Carnegie Europe initiative. And we are going to start with the presentation of the research prepared by the analysts of Carnegie Europe.
I'm Tom de Waal from Carnegie Europe. Our office is in Brussels, although I live in London. Very happy to be here in Kiev today. We're going to hear about two papers on Kharkiv today. One by my Carnegie Europe colleagues, Balazs Jarabik and Natalia Shapovalova. And then we're going to hear Kateryna, Zarembo and Sergiy are going to present Kateryna is going to present their new Europe Center paper on Kharkiv as well. We're going to have some comments from Volodymyr Fisenko and a little internal discussion, and then we must find time for a general discussion as well. Let me just say that for Carnegie's part, this is actually the second paper. We've been collaborating with the University of Leiden, looking at also not only Kharkiv Oblast, but also Odessa Oblast. Balazs Jarabik and I published a paper on Bessarabia a few months ago, which I think, if you haven't seen, I'm sure you'd find interesting. And as someone who studies conflicts, I think it's interesting to look at regions, and Kharkiv is a place where conflict was predicted back in 2014, but didn't happen. Let's recall that in 2014 there were some quite exaggerated predictions about conflict across the whole of eastern and southern Ukraine, that there would be conflict in Odessa, in Dnipro, in Kharkiv, and there were certainly some of the reasons to believe that was possible. And I think my colleagues have explored very well and analyzed why conflict didn't happen, in part because of some intrinsic reasons in the region, but also in part because of some clever politics played between Kharkiv and the center. So I'm certainly going to be very interested to hear what they have to say. So I'm going to pass over, first of all, to Natalia. And then we'll hear from Balazs and Kateryna.
Доброго дня, вас всіх вітаю. Хочу заохотити вас
свою доповідь. So I would like to tell you about the case of Kharkiv. So first, this will appear in English and then in Ukrainian translation. So we will download this report. So I would like to tell you about our work. So we were in Kharkiv, and in the oblast we spoke with the experts and the activists, and we have a lot of data from statistical point of view to prepare this paper. I would like to say that the east of Ukraine does not differ much from other regions of Ukraine, and I mean that there are problems with supremacy of law and corruption and with the human rights. At the same time, geographical placement of the region and historical heritage, there are some differences, and we would like to study them and how Russia influenced this region and the challenges the region faced in 2014, and the attempt to establish the separatist republic there, and how it influenced the economy of the region. And for us, we reflected what we found out in our paper. So this region remains really important. The local experts said that we didn't have the border, and now the border is closed. And previously there was high intensity of communication, people-to-people communication, trade, cross-border trade, and now this reduced significantly. It is nearly zero now, and it influenced economic situation of the region, and the Russian Federation is still the main partner for this region. And we see that there is a reduction of economic ties with Russia, and it was even before 2014. It is connected with the decrease of industrial capacity. And after 2014, this process accelerated. Also, the attitude towards Russia in 2014 and further on, and now, we may say that this was the region. In Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, there are people who wanted to integrate to Euro-Asian structures. This is the region. This region was divided, and 1/4 of people said that the conflict should be blamed on Kiev, and other 1/4 of people said that Moscow is to blame. And others, they just avoid answering those questions. And they do not, and the people, they want to find compromise. And they are proponents of neutrality. Pro-European sentiments didn't increase in the region. Also in 2014, there was an attempt to establish separatist republic. And the border is really close, and the front line was really close. And in 2014 and 2016, there were a lot of violence, shootings, a lot of injured people, and people who were killed, and SBU qualified them as terror attacks, and the situation now improved. And there is circulation of weapons, and there is use of weapons, and also there are military facilities in the oblast, and there were situations with explosions on sites, and military situation stabilized between 2014-2015, but the tension remains. So about social adaptation of the region, 2014-2015, there was deterioration of the conflict in Donbass, and more than 300,000 IDPs came to Kharkiv Oblast, and this was really difficult for the hospitals, kindergarten schools. They were overloaded. Now the situation stabilized in the region, and there's no such tension now. There is some intolerance to IDPs, but the majority of IDPs are integrated now. At the same time, showing these discrepancies, we wanted to show in our paper how this region reflects the overall problems of Ukraine. This is about the supremacy of law and the non-investigation of serious human rights violations connected with conflict, and the role of SBU as a body of security, and human rights organizations recorded tortures, abductions, and state bodies, they reject those facts, and also about responsibility for political violence. In 2014, some civilians were killed then. So we see the situation connected with Euromaidan cases, and what we see that there are some political influences on judicial power. And there's a process against Natalia Stepa, mayor of Slavyansk, but she was trialed in Kharkiv for separatism and allegiance to terror organization. And this court process against mayor of Kharkiv, Kateryna, he is investigated for abduction and torture of a person. So this shows the general problems, not only of Kharkiv, but it reflects overall problems that exist throughout Ukraine. So about implementation of reforms, we see degradation of reforms. The police reform, so those officers, there is police violence increased, and also public is more tolerant to this type of violence now. So only 16 united territorial communities exist there. So this process, let's say, it is limited. The process of unification is going in those communities where political elites from power, from Petro Poroshenko, they showed that this force is in power, and they established the communities. And the activists are concerned because more resources are needed, and the budgets of the communities, they increased several times. But there is no increase in transparency of power and the instruments of local democracy to properly control the public resources, the public funds. So despite some problems, we see that we need reforms, and there should be proper fight against corruption. Otherwise, we cannot get proper results.
Natalia.
Thank you, Natalia. I would like to give the floor to Kateryna Zarembo, who is focused on the issues of attitude and desperation of Kharkiv residents to European integration. During our discussion in April this year, we paid attention to silence or some vagueness which was in southern and eastern regions of Ukraine. We noticed this last year among young people from 14 to 29 years old. On the issues which were related to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, young people mostly were for the option, it is hard to say, or I don't know. So this option of undecidedness was 60% sometimes. So according to Carnegie Europe research, the responsibility for the conflict in Donbass, I would like to turn attention of Carnegie Europe that 9% were in 2016 and 2017 25%, from 34 to 45% the option of silence gained more adherence. Thank you, Sergiy. My colleague Natalia has already noticed that if we compare the sociological research data of 2014 with 2018, the support to Eurointegration in Kharkiv region has not increased. It was at the level of 30%. It remains at the 30%. But support of unions with Russia, such as customs union, decreased, but not because the population started to support the European integration, but for those silent people. The groups are distributed by 30%, 3 groups: those who support integration with Russia, those who support integration with European Union, and silent people. This silence is unwillingness to voice out opinions. If we talk about the referendum on if it would happen tomorrow, then Kharkiv region will say no. There almost 50% of people in general opinion polls about European integration, they do not trust in those people who question them, who ask questions. The same trend is among IDPs when political or geopolitical questions are asked. People remain silent. They do not want to answer. On the one hand, the east of Ukraine and Kharkiv region, they do not differ from other regions of Ukraine. They want improvement of standards, of life standards, such as they could see if European integration takes place. GFK of Ukraine found that European integration in the East is supposed to is already reflected as improvements in infrastructure, other social indicators. So when people will see there's real improvements locally, they will believe then. So this is infrastructure, transport infrastructure. The underground stations were opened thanks to the EBRD, and the centers of administrative services were opened thanks to US money, US assistance, but they are not perceived as international support. They are perceived more as their municipalities' achievements. So on the one hand, we can see the joint aspiration to European standards and European quality, which is high all over Ukraine, 60%. On the other hand, we see this ambivalence in Kharkiv region and sociological gray zone where Kharkiv residents are now. I would stop here. Our research is available at the website of New Europe Center, and do not hesitate to ask me questions. Thank you, colleagues.
As well. First of all, I'm really happy to be here for several reasons. And one of this reason is as to be partnering with the New Europe Center, which I have been working with for a long time, and I really appreciate what they do. The second is because we're talking about the topic which I think long neglected and needs much more attention for understanding where the country is, and these are the regions. You know, and I particularly think that for Western policy audience, and even here in Kiev, the Western embassies are kind of lacking a bit more, you know, diverse takes and opinions and insights on what's going on in the regions. And a lot of opinions about Ukraine is actually Kiev-based. So I really appreciate this, and I hope that this work, both papers, actually can contribute to a more in-depth understanding of what's going on in Ukraine, which is not going to be only Kiev-based. Really just a few points before Mr. Fesenko and the Q&A. I have been to Kharkiv first time in 2003 and have been going back to Kharkiv, well, every now and often, like every second year I have actually been there. Before this quite extensive 3-4 times trips to Kharkiv in the past year. You know, there was be a few surprises to me, but I think when you take a look at these factors, and number one, for me, it was a political pact between the center as well as the regional elites. You know, and this is what it stood up, why Kharkiv is different from Donbass. There was no such a thing. And the second, and that was a surprise to me, that how much Kharkiv people, intellectuals, policymakers, NGOs, ordinary people compare Kharkiv to Odessa. Not to Kiev. They talk about it. How about it? Odessa here? How about Odessa there? And indeed, the two cities are very similar. But what really united these cities after, you know, the Donbas conflict and the Crimea annexation is that for both the elites and the people were more important to be pro-Kharkiv than pro-Russia. And this local patriotism, which was meeting with the political pact, which center was a key, you know, difference, let's say. Different factors from Donbass, and one of the main reasons why, you know, the Russian Spring and the local the conflict didn't spread further. Obviously, the political pact is tricky because this has been also a big obstacle for political reform and conserved the actual politics, local politics, in a lot of ways. You know, we can argue, or anyone can argue, that that was the necessary evil, but 4 years after this, I think, and going to be very interesting, I think, from this dimension to look at the 2019 election cycles and what's going to happen after. But, you know, like what really stood up, and even this, Kharkiv is not different from the rest of Ukraine, is the impunity, is the role of the secret services locally to making sure that Kharkiv actually united with Ukraine. At the same time, we thought that this is, you know, a different way, more engagement, more dialogue would be bringing more positive results, meaning that the majority, there's a silent majority. You know, the NEC paper is also saying silence in Kharkiv. We also found that the majority is accepting, you know, only accepting the turn, which is important, I think, given the local circumstances, but not supporting it. And one of the reasons why it's not supporting it simply because the way how it's forced on them. And 4 years after, almost 5 years after, I think it would be important for the policymakers to look at this and kind of change the way how this engagement, the relationship is formed between Kharkiv and the region. Number 3 point is the economy, the social economic factors. I think it's one of the key because Kharkiv suffered a lot, although not that much, as you know, a couple of other regions, certainly not more than Donbass, and there is a decent, a modest economic growth, which is also very interesting. That like one of the reasons of this growth, not only the reorientation of the markets, reasonably successful given the circumstances, but also the role of the state. The state procurement, the military factories and all this, I think it was one of the key. And this kind of heralds the way forward. More state engagement, particularly in this way, more money for the region would be a way forward. But at the same time, the increase of the salaries and all this did not return the social economic, the quality of life into the pre-crisis level, which I think it's kind of an important factor for the silent majority particularly. My last point, the EU in Kharkiv, and first of all, everybody I talked to, ordinary people, said, oh, go to the Kharkiv Park, this is Europe's most beautiful park. Oh, go to the square, this is Europe's biggest square. So they were really boosting like we are European. But I also remember that the first shopping mall in Donetsk was named Europa. So there is, a latent and ongoing long Europeanization, soft Europeanization, which, has its impact on the local people. At the same time, there is no EU. There essentially has been no EU, no embassies, no European structures per se, no European businesses, until now. And this reorientation is just started. So, expecting that the locals are going to embrace something so far, so abstract for them, it's a bit premature. A lot more investment needs to be there. Now, if you open up the Kharkiv airport website, now you can see that you can fly actually to Europe. A few years ago, it wasn't possible. So a lot of people, you see advertisement. Unfortunately, a lot of people now not going to Russia, but going to the EU. I'm saying, unfortunately, because they shouldn't go, they should find jobs at home. That would be the alternative. But anyway, I think it's a bit premature to think that immediately, because Kiev turned and Western Ukrainian turned, Eastern Ukraine is going to turn as well. Much more incentives needs to be done. Much more investment needs to be done. But this is a tendency, a long-term tendency of this Europeanization, which I don't think is going to change. And the fact that there is a compromise, there is an acceptance of this turn is a positive news, given really the long relationship and how the proximity of Kharkiv to Russia is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Balazs. I will now. We've heard three very interesting presentations, which raise a lot of questions. We've particularly heard about the silence of Kharkiv, that there's a silent majority there, who we can guess what they think, but we're not exactly sure. And are they living in fear? Are they living in expectation? Do they really support the local authorities? Many questions. I'm going to invite Mr. Vladimir Fisenko, to give us some feedback and comments. How are we going to do this? Shall I? Oh, okay, you've got a microphone. Do we want to?
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to participate in discussion. Vladimir Fisenko, I'm a former resident of Kharkiv. That's why for me this is really a acute issue. I support the main results of the research and this the phenomenon of silence. This is the trait that characterizes Kharkiv situation. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that about a year ago, from April 2014, there was an attempt of Russian Spring and seizure of Kharkiv to create a People's Republic, and until February 2015, the situation was really tense. There were terror attacks, and the majority of cities didn't have this. And the key figures, they were neutralized or they fled to Russia. But like in Odessa, they have pro-Russian underground agents, and this is a serious threat. This is the absolute minority of people who have aggressive pro-Russian views, but the relative majority, this majority of silence, we have these people there, and they can recognize the victory of any winner. If Russia wins, as it was in Donetsk, they will recognize the victory of pro-Russian forces. If Ukraine wins and demonstrates success, so they will take the side of Ukraine and Ukrainian vector of development. And Kharkiv has powerful Ukrainian history. And in this paper, you don't have this, but it is important to understand the situation for the future. This is the city with its complexes, with unambiguous history and mentality. What I mean, in Kharkiv in 1990s, there was a stereotype, a myth about the second capital. And they do not say that this is the Soviet capital, but the capital of Ukraine until 1934. It was the capital of Ukraine, and there was a renaissance of Ukraine. Brazil was restored, and this Ukrainian component of mentality in Kharkivshina. Kharkiv is mainly Russian-speaking city with the Soviet and post-Soviet thinking. But Ukrainian component, cultural component, political component was always present and visible and relatively influential, but not the main. And what is positive side? In 10 years or 15 years, despite formal statistics of sentiment, pro-European views, the pro-European views, they increased, especially among elite and intellectual elites. They have the biggest increase, and among middle class and in academic sector, it is more visible because for them, the motives for support of Eurointegration is obvious. This is a real benefit for them. They see this as opportunity for themselves. And this majority of silence, they are connected with family ties to Russia. Local business historically was connected closely to Russia. And now, there is such a balance in such a situation, but what is the problem? In times of independence, Kharkiv elites, they felt themselves as those who didn't get relative bonuses compared with other regional elites. In Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk elites, they have their own story of success. Kharkiv elites do not have such a story. So they were present in central power, and now, after some break, they are now represented, but this complex of second class, of some less value. So this corresponds to their regional mentality. So these are the complexes, the main ones. And there are some contradictions in elites and in population, and we should take into account these discrepancies. And in Ukraine and in Kharkiv, especially in Kharkiv, there is a cognitive dissonance of the attitude towards Russia and the war in Donbass. So some people, they do not want to speak about European integration, and people do not know what they really want, these people who are Russian-speaking population. And Russia for them are close relatives. But now this is the country that is in war, and people do not want to support separatist republics. They just do not want to have this war. They, maybe the majority of them, they do not like Ukraine that much, but they just do not want this war and this cognitive dissonance. They feel themselves Ukrainian, but specific ones, Slobozhanщina residents, and it influences their behavior. So this is the complex. And one more indicator. So speaking about Kernes, mayor of Kharkiv, he is the most popular figure in Kharkiv, political figure. And what is the Kernes paradox? He is a really notorious person, odious person, and he humiliates people, and this is his style of management. He likes to humiliate people, and there are many people around him who likes this humiliation. And he is a notorious politician. He has big connections with Russia, and he belongs to the silent majority. He is loyal to power in Kiev. He has conflict with Avakov, and he understands that he can survive only by expressing his loyalty to the president and to give power in order not to suffer from Avakov. But here's the paradox of Kernes. He is a very efficient mayor, and 75% of residents support his activity. Gorky Park, this is his favorite thing, and people of Kharkiv, they value that he is an efficient mayor. He takes care of the city. And why I mention Kernes? You know, the state of his health and other problems. If he is not in power in the nearest future, we will face the new situation in Kharkiv, because he really influences Kharkiv elites and the situation in the city. And we shouldn't have illusions. The majority of Kharkiv residents next year, we believe they will support those political forces and candidates who are not connected with Maidan opposition bloc, Party for Life. So what will be position of Kernes? Whether Renaissance Party take part in the elections, maybe the majority will support this Renaissance Party, and Kernes is the main figure there. So on whom we can rely on in Kharkiv? People, young people, they understand that we should defend Ukraine, and there are people of values and pro-European values, and we should support these people, and we lack communication there. So there's powerful administration there due to connections with the administration in Kharkiv and in Kiev, and there is specific alliance with Kernes. But we should rely not only on oblast administration, but also on civil society. And there is no concentration and focus of effort. And there are no bright personalities who can be nominated on some positions or to participate in mayor's elections. And we should promote Zhadan, because he is more known in Kiev than an authority than in Kharkiv, and he is respected, but he is mostly known throughout Ukraine. So we should educate people. We should promote bright, powerful personalities who can become leaders of the new pro-European Kharkivщина. This is the main task. So we should support young people, and we need powerful leaders who could lead Kharkiv in the direction of Europe.
I'm sure you've advanced the discussion greatly. Lots of questions. Who wants to respond?
Я може просто лише додам, підкреслю це, що якби ми знаємо, що відбувається в Україні, тобто
I would like to stress that we do not know what is going on at different levels, and what we saw in Kiev, and what we saw in Kharkiv, and that it is compared with Odessa. There's local power. This is the same pro-power party of Poroshenko, and with some exceptions, there are local parties, and there are also regional powers, and that would be good to have good communication between the powers, regional and central ones. And there's no serious political opposition, and the issue of the next elections, where to find the alternative to Kernes, because the power purged all the opponents, and there's no good opposition there. There's no opposition that exists at the national level, like parties of coalition. And there are smaller parties, they are less represented locally, people do not hear them, and there is Samopomich, and they are opposition, but in reality, a lot of party people, they are from business, and they have some problems with power, and there's no proper opposition in Kharkiv. There are separate politicians and activists, and this is one of the problems in Kharkivshina. And what happened in Donbass? There was only one power, there was no proper opposition, and the protest of people who were not satisfied with social and economic issues, how they live, and no one could represent their interests on some platform of negotiations. And the same is ongoing in Kharkiv. And you know that they support Kernes in Kharkiv, and this Renaissance Party was needed for the local elections. And the big issue, if Kernes will come out of policy tomorrow, so what will happen? Kiev and bloc of Petro Poroshenko, they cooperate with Kernes, and they will be also concerned what will happen and who can collect votes in such a vacuum. Maybe some nationalist or populist movements, both pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian, more radical voices may be heard, and it can also pose some threat.
Вам дякую за ваші
Thank you for your comments. I would like to remind you that I remember we were on 2014 in Kharkiv at the discussion on security issues. I was impressed with the monolithic standing of Kharkiv allies. In Odessa and Zaporizhia, we heard pro-Russian opinions, but not in Kharkiv. The second which was most acute issue. Majority of Kharkiv residents were talking about hybrid threat and about the need of public awareness campaign in Kharkiv, but we were not heard. So during 5 years, nothing has been done, and we should do something with raising public awareness. In April, when we engaged Sergiy and many activists of Kharkiv, and we tried to make some platform to reopen Kharkiv for Kharkiv residents. We need more such actions, such activities, not on the part of NGOs. community. I would like to give the floor to our guests for their comments and questions to Carnegie Europe Center, to New Europe Center. Good afternoon, Viktor Khmelevsky, the Association of Renters and of Ukraine, and also an employer, and you can popularize your ideas in our magazine. I am an editor-in-chief of the magazine. I like your research. How in your research the participation of business and the East of Ukraine in general is reflected in the standings, because you told about dialogues, salaries raising. Why Kharkiv is silent? The social situation is shaped by the richness level of the territory and also the satisfaction level of the population, and the growing silence maybe is due to growing silence of employers in the dialogue with regime and with employees. This is a European classic and world's classic. Maybe if nothing changes at the national level as concerns the regulatory policy on business, on doing business and constitutional freedoms of business, then the silence share will grow further, because the proceeds could be lost by the citizens. Thank you for your question. Carnegie Europe research is partially dedicated to this topic. Thank you for your question. You really touched the important topic. If we talk about the free trade agreement, the European integration should be related to businesses of Ukraine in Kharkiv region. Also, we found that some large companies such as Pivdenkabel, Turboatom, Kharkiv Tractor Plant, they managed to enter the European market and to supply their goods there. But talking about SMEs, there are only a few enterprises, few businesses. The changes have happened now. SMEs are thinking how to be certified so that they can supply their goods to the European marketplace. But we are talking about the process, not about the results so far. According to the latest statistical data, Kharkiv export to Russia more, 25% against 20% of exports to Europe.
Most important thing, how to utilize it, not only for Kharkiv, but overall, how to utilize, for example, the DCFTA, the association agreement, the European Union. What I considered one of the biggest, weakness, let's put it like that, is the lack of support, sectoral support toward competitiveness. Particularly Kharkiv has very strong industries. Those industries is very strongly connected to Russia. And these industries are, for obvious reasons, for not ready to, to reorient themselves immediately. Competing in the European market is much harder and it requires, several other skills, price, promotion, various other quality, various other things which, neither the Ukrainian state nor the private sector was ready. Kharkiv has huge potential, and it's actually showing how reorientation was possible. And this reorientation, when we look at the data, available data, was not only to the EU, or mostly not to the EU, but to the global markets, which were showing the potential. Obviously here, the cost of transportation, a lot of other things needs to be taken into consideration, and that requires state response. And this is what kind of I'm missing. I think this is where the Ukrainian government is slowly but surely coming to understand that the DCFTA alone is not a solution unless there is a support program. And once Ukraine is going to be better, in more money, more investment is going to be there. That's like the potential of Kharkiv is going to utilize more. The second, like the trade with Russia is going to be a big lingering issue, until there's going to be a modus operandi. There's already a modus operandi, but this modus operandi is very gray. I don't want to get into this because I understand the political repercussions, but from the position of Kharkiv, that's kind of going to be a lingering question unless it's going to be solved. And number 3 is the FDI, the foreign direct investment. This is where also Kharkiv as well as Ukraine is missing a lot, and this is where the conditions are so far not there. Conditions meaning rule of law, justice, business environment, and all this. And here, like you see very slow progress, if you see progress at all. The business environment, perhaps there is progress, and actually the biggest progress, but when it comes to investment protection and all this, very far from it. And Kharkiv has the obvious, again, weakness by position. It's very hard to get there. So transport, like the airport, rail, and all this is going to be also significantly important if, Kharkiv is serious about this. And my absolutely last point, when I was in Kharkiv, and it very much reminded me because of the university city, because it's a huge, workforce industry, it very much reminded me in Brno, in Czech Republic, which used to be very similar, and there was a very strong turnaround, to actually build on what the other potential, not only the industries, but the university, the intellectual capacity, the innovation, IT. And Brno was very successful to utilize the EU funds to do that. So there was a strategic symbiosis between the city leadership and the EU to do that change, transition from industrial to post-industrial, and a very successful one. And these are the examples that Kharkiv, I think, should look at. And here the EU also should consider direct strategic partnership with cities like that, particularly in the East. Thank you.
Чи будуть ще запитання, коментарі? Будь ласка.
More comments. Igor Karetnik, Ukrainian Institute of National Memory and NIDP, and at Donetsk, former resident. You do not tell the word war. This is war, and this is frontline territory, near frontline territory. So silent majority is due to this war frontline territory, because people are afraid to comment. Miss Kateryna, people do not know what to expect tomorrow, what their fates will be. They do not want to comment. They do not want to tell what they think. Some time ago, I wrote a paper on social moods in Kharkiv region. Silent majority is characteristic feature of Soviet times and Soviet societies. In the Soviet Union, the situation when the top management leaders were talking one things, and people, ordinary people, they were talking about other things, but there was the mechanism of oppressions, the machinery of oppressions, and you can be punished for your voicing out your opinion. So silent majority is also the heritage of the Soviet Union society. So in today's situation, we can say this is the atavism of the Soviet system, post-Soviet system, Ukraine has already achieved some success. Our enemy is stopped and does not move further along our territory. And when the number of silent majority decreases, this would mean better result, and it is possible when people see that the situation becomes better. And one more comment. 1 year ago, the U.S. Congressman Bill Barr said we should stop saying separatism. When we say separatism in Donbass, this would mean Russia has won, because this is a Russian term, the Russian idea. We do not have separatist republics in Donbass and Lugansk. We have the territory annexed, the territories conquered. Never Donetsk has been the Basque country which wanted to be independent all his life. I can add to your parallels with the Soviet phenomenon of silent majority. Yes, this was due to the need to physically survive and also to live comfortable life. When residents in Kharkiv understand this polarization, so they want just to feel comfortable inside, not to have confrontation in families, so they prefer no confrontation, gentlemanly agreements, which is more characteristic of Western civilizations, when people respect opposing views of each other in the society, in the community. So when signals will be given from the capital and other regions to stop this polarization towards to the sake of European integration, then the situation will be mended. Thank you for your comments and specifying questions. Yes, for the silence, there are many factors underlying, which we already have mentioned, and for us as the researchers, we do not condemn those silent majority people, but sometimes people are silent because they have mental traumas. But we sociologists, political scientists, and other sciences will be addressing this phenomenon for a long time. As to the international conflict, we agree with you and do not have difference with you.
Питання, коментарі, шановні колеги? Спочатку ви, пані.
Я представниця Донбасу. Я дуже добре знаю Донецьку і Луганську області. Я жила в період окупації, бігла звідти і бігла через Харків. І бачила там дуже багато людей, таку, знаєте, жваву ситуацію. І от коли я потрапила до Харкова приблизно місяць тому у справах, то він мене здивував. Це було зовсім, ну я не скажу мертве місто, але якесь таке, знаєте, на шляху до цього. Тобто відчувається, що така от складова економічної жвавості і активності, як торгівля з Росією, вона щезла. Тобто люди сприймають цей стан як свою власну біду, особливо малий і середній бізнес. Вони втратили його. Тому у мене пропозиція, не те, що пропозиція така, а думка така, що треба Харків як можна більш форсовано переорієнтувати на західні ринки. Я не знаю, як це робити, але, будь ласка, майте це на увазі. На західні ринки – це, по-перше, для бізнесу. По-друге, для молоді. Як можливо більше, може потрібна спеціальна програма, долучити її до отримання освіти на Заході. Хай вона їздить більше у різні поїздки, хай це буде по лінії культури, по лінії освіти, але вона має це бачити, до чого вона має тягнутися. Тепер третє. Оце от мовчазна більшість, як ви кажете, чи то мовчання, так? Мені здається, що це не просто совковість. Мені здається, що це зміна настроїв у харків'ян. Вони не бачать покращення ситуації. Може, воно і є. Якщо дивитися по економічних показниках, покращення ситуації є, але люди цього не бачать, як і не бачать в інших областях. І ще хочу зауважити, звернути увагу на політичне майбутнє. Як його треба прорахувати? От дивіться, діє так зване відновлення Донбасу. Є програма, те, що називаємо ми умовно відновлення Донбасу, це відновлення східних областей, чомусь до східних областей, крім Харківської, Донецької, Луганської, приєднані ще Дніпропетровська і Запорізька області. Вони отримують зараз великі кошти на розвиток економіки, на відновлення критичної інфраструктури. І це може і правильно, але мені здається, що це неправильно з точки зору мене як переселенки, як внутрішньо переміщеної особи. Я ще раз підкреслюю, я з Донбасу. І тому дуже прискіпливо ставлюся до таких речей. Ми були свідками того, як поступово ще у 2006 році намагалися тихою сапою захопити Краснодонський район з Росії. Про це, якщо вас цікавить, я буду говорити іншим разом, а зараз скажу, що зараз та ж сама модель іде на всі 5 областей, які умовно називаються східними. Те, що ці області отримують набагато більше коштів, ніж інші, донорські, бюджетні кошти, сприяє їх оновленню. Там дійсно ставка йде на інновації, на інвестиції, і ці інвестиції повинні бути в основному і українські, і західні. Зараз закінчую. Але якщо ті люди, ті магнати, які із Донецької і Луганської областей, тобто з зони війни, осіли у Харкові, у Дніпропетровську, у Запоріжжі, вони недаром це зав'язали в єдиний вузол і закинули нам ідею відновлення Донбасу. Якщо ці люди стануть на ноги за допомогою України, то вони почнуть їй диктувати свої умови. Політична спрямованість їх ясна. І давайте згадаємо, що ці 5 областей – це є однією з частин задумів, навіть противно це прізвище говорити, Путіна, щодо Новоросії. Чи не відновлюємо, чи не будуємо ми своїми руками Новоросію? Тобто для цих 5 областей треба спеціальну програму щодо контактів, щодо впливу на менталітет, хоча на нього важко впливати, щодо впливу на настрої, щодо виховання. Дякую.
Дуже дякую. Ще одне запитання, будь ласка. Ні, ми зрозуміли.
Доброго дня, Томаш Бойко, посольство Польщі. В мене трошки більш тактичне запитання, вибачте. Хотів запитати про загрози виборчого періоду. Тобто, чи ви, коли робили свої аналізи, бачили загрози для Харківщини в цей період, який почнеться вже з осені цього року і закінчиться осінню наступного року? Чи ці 2 великі виборчі кампанії можуть повпливати на стабільність регіону? Дякую.
Дуже дякую.
Я можу сказати, що в принципі ми не побачили ніяких таких відмінностей тут в Харківській області, ніж там де-інде, в тому сенсі, що виборчий процес і завжди є певні проби там зірвати якісь частини виборчого процесу через політичне змагання між партіями, не завжди доброчесне. Тобто якихось таких відверто безпекових, мені здається, що зараз в принципі державні органи мають контроль над тим ситуацією в регіоні, тобто зменшилася кількість цих вибухів, перестрілок, того, що можна назвати терористичними актами або там актами диверсії. Тобто, звичайно, вибори завжди такий період, коли треба бути на вістрі, але щоб в цьому сенсі якось Харків відрізнявся, я думаю, що ні. Я би хотіла, може, сказати про інше, те, що ми чули теж особливо від громадянських активістів, від представників там справжньої політичної позиції, такої, якби якихось менших партій і так далі. Це те, що ці компанії з дискредитації і громадянського суспільства, організації громадянського суспільства, та потім випадки фізичних нападів, там, вбивства і так далі на громадянських активістів. Це, мабуть, те, чого найбільше побоюються власне такі ті активні учасники виборчого процесу майбутнього, або організації, які будуть спостерігати за виборами і так далі. Тобто, на жаль, ці тенденції, можна сказати, погіршуються не тільки на Харківщині, там теж в Одесі, в Східній Україні. І якщо це розцінювати як загрозу для легітимності виборчого процесу, то це те, що ми почули, коли ми робили опитування.
Якщо говорити про загрози, то можна сказати так, напевно, в 2014 році все ж таки політичні сили були взагалом по країні, були більш відверто антиросійськими. Нині можна передбачити, що проєвропейська якість майбутнього парламенту буде нижчою, буде меншою. І, зокрема, такі латентно проросійські антиєвропейські партії, як «За життя», «Відродження», «Опоблок», вони, звичайно, мають певну суттєву кількість прихильників на Сході і на Півдні. І, власне, от на Харківщині є така цікава ситуація, складається, що з одного боку критично мало людей в Харкові, 13% підтримує те, як справи йдуть в Україні загалом. При цьому Харків на 3-му місці з усіх обласних центрів в Україні, які вважають, що у них все добре, тобто 55% населення Харкова вважає, що справи в місті йдуть добре. Колосальна підтримка мера. І при цьому зв'язки між мером та президентом для того, щоб, як так і про це говориться, так, щоб був адміністративний ресурс підтримки чинної центральної української влади на виборах в Харківщині. Тобто такі певні амбівалентні парадокси, які поки що ми не відомо, як точно спрацюють, але ми, напевно, можемо говорити про ці латентні проросійські настрої, які на півдні і на сході будуть проштовхувати людей у парламент і владу на місцях.
Та, звичайно.
Про ризики. Один з головних ризиків не тільки для Харкова, а для багатьох регіонів України, просто по-різному і в різних формах, це ризик дестабілізації. Як під час виборчого процесу, там, між першим і другим туром, після другого туру, і може бути після виборів, в залежності від результатів виборів і так далі. І зверну увагу ще на одну таку потенційну проблему. От одним з потенційних фаворитів і можливий переможець виборів Юлія Тимошенко. У неї зараз нема, скажімо так, своєї впливової авторитетної людини в Харкові. Раніше організації «Батьківщина», ще БЮТ, блок Юлії Тимошенко очолювали. Я нагадаю, це важливе прізвище для Харкова. Аваков, ще раніше Фельдман. Фельдман, колишній ворог Кернеса, зараз в нейтралітеті, от належить до тієї самої мовчазної більшості, тільки в елітах. А Аваков, а також Ложкін і нинішній губернатор, Райнін, керівник адміністрації президента, теж харків'янин. Це противаги Кернесу. І елементи взаємодії, і противаги. В принципі, при всій бюрократичності, скажімо так, і відірваності від масової думки оцих фігур і інституцій, вони створюють певний баланс в Харкові. А от раптом там перемога кандидата, у яких нема впливових фігур в Харкові. Виникає дисбаланс певний, яким може скористатися там і Кернес, і проросійські еліти. От тут є теж певний ризик, на мій погляд, і тому, я кажу, треба всім провідним політичним силам шукати тих людей, ті політичні сили, прошарки, на які вони мають спиратися в Харкові.
Чи ще будуть запитання, коментарі? Так, дуже радий вітати Роланда Ковача із Пакту, який підтримує, власне, ініціативу Engage і нас.
Roland Kovács, Engage. I would have two questions, if I may. But first of all, for the really in-depth and very, very insightful commentaries and notes. And I'm very, very pleased that Carnegie and the New Europe Center are working together to give us a little bit more, as well I said at the beginning, and you, Sergiy, of Ukraine, not just what's seen through the prism of Kiev, but what's seen the prisms of various regions of Ukraine. I hope next is Zakarpattia, just because I'm personally interested. But the questions. The first one is more sort of still the descriptive part of your presentations, and that is this. Have you, while visiting the region in Kharkiv, identified any sort of major pointers, whether in the city of Kharkiv and the rest of the region, tendencies, sentiments, sociologies, economic potentials were different, similar? Is there anything you could speak to that topic if you have some to share? And I'm asking this because that's one of our findings when we are traveling in the Kharkiv region, is that if for nothing else, that for geographic regions, Kharkiv city is kind of an outlier of the whole of the region. And the second one is more political, and it's a little bit connected to, I guess, what risks are, but also whether there is, a potential of, if not challenging, but at least to develop, challenging the current status quo, political status quo, but to at least have some potential of developing some alternative centers of power in the region, and whether it's geographic, political, or other. And the background of this question is because, as you said, that there is, and we feel too from our partners, that there is fear of very openly challenging. Those who dare to can expect sometimes physical repercussions. And we don't see that on the local oblast level there was really strong checks and balances. Whether there was the branches of government functioning, the different branches of government functioning in Kharkiv. It's not just Kharkiv Oblast, I guess, but particular to this case, I would be curious whether you see institutions or groups. I see Natalia answer already. Thanks. Sure.
I'm going to speak Ukrainian. So, difference between Kharkiv and the rest of the region. So this is in the structure of the economy. You may see this. Kharkiv is the industrial city, and there are other industrial cities, and the rest is not so industrially developed. So there's a sphere of agriculture, and there are smaller towns. And one more thing, in Kharkiv, they speak mostly in Russian, and in Oblast they speak more Ukrainian. And Eurointegration poll shows that Kharkiv is more pro-European than the region, but not on a big scale. So many people do not want to take sides. And in Kharkiv, and this is a progressive part of population, young people and small and medium-sized business, and those people who worked on factories and plants, they lost a lot. So there is big difference between the regions, and the cities, young people and educated people, they are more pro-European, and the same in Oblast. More educated people that are closer to city, people travel to big cities to get employment. Kharkiv becomes bigger and includes smaller towns around Kharkiv and remote regions, remote centers. It is difficult to travel there. There is no good road. It is easier to travel to Kramatorsk than to Lisova. So connections are difficult, and it influences the development of those areas and on the opinion of people concerning Ukraine, Russia, and Europe. There are regions in the oblasts that borders on Russia, and they lost much more than other regions. And that borders on Donetsk Oblast, and they had many acute situations because there were many IDPs, and the front line was closed. And there was big military presence there. Thank you. So, and those regions that are closer to Poltava region, and they had more pro-Ukrainian views and pro-European views. So it would be really nice to see such division in that this division, it should be studied, this division in opinions of people throughout the oblast. So we believe that these pro-European regions and pro-Russian regions, they are together. There is no big difference in opinions between different regions. There is no big difference in their identity. Maybe we should make more in-depth research in order to find out these regional differences. So there is political regime in Kharkiv that do not allow opposition to be formed. And locally, especially concerning small villages and communities, there's no big difference after 2014. So people came to power, I mean locally. They just changed the party. Now they are in Renaissance and Bloc Poroshenko party. So if you are speaking with people who live there in the regional centers, in these 20 years, those local elites, for example, the head of city council or the council of the village, they control finances, the money of the community, local small business. They would like maybe to have some representation, but they depend on mayor, and they are afraid of doing something because he controls everything. So there is some form of feudalism or near feudalism, and it prevents the formation of opposition. Those people who have resources and knowledge, how to manage community, how to allocate resources. And this is also about the elections in United Territorial Communities. Bloc Poroshenko, of Petro Poroshenko, wants to get loyalty, but there is no change of elites, and the situation continues. So those corrupt officials, they remain.
I will tell you my observations, Kharkiv region specifics, actual by dynamics which we saw from Kiev, where we grouped the regions by specifics. Every region has its strengths, its attractive features, starting with Donetsk, Lugansk regions, and to the west, and to the south, and to the north. And as to integration and cohesion and common Ukrainian identity and what does it mean to be Ukrainian, the answer to this question could differ in different regions. So what alternative elites look like if they are? If we hear the demand on such management style as Mr. Kernes demonstrates, then what will be the next leader, the demand for leaders? So we would like to give you for final the floor for final remarks.
Thank you all for being here. I think we've all learned a lot. I think we also come away with many more questions, particularly, and as for the whole of Ukraine, I think, as it's been highlighted, the election period is undoubtedly going to make the situation more unstable, unfortunately, rather than less stable, as there's more competition for power. But I think this study of Kharkiv illustrates the need for similar studies of other Ukrainian regions, all of which have their own particular dynamics, their own local politics, which are very important to understand. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank Ukraine Crisis Media Center for hosting us, the New Europe Center in particular for the collaboration, our interpreters for doing a fine job for me and for a few others, and particularly, of course, to our speakers. Thank you.